Salutation, my esteemed students of siege warfare. Welcome back to another lecture with Professor Siege Captain. In today's lecture, we're going to be discussing the evolved form of the gastraphetes, proving that military research and development was here to stay. Meet the Oxybeles, the gastraphetes if the gastraphetes took steroids and was a powerlifter permanently on the bulk. Before we get started, my dear students, I wanted to say thank you so much for the comments on the latest videos. It means so much to me having this response from the community. That's what I'm trying to do here. I want to build a siege community. I make these videos because I want the dialogue. I want to learn stuff about siege weapons and I want to educate about siege weapons. I want to express my love for siege weapons, explain why they're so interesting to me, and share that interest with you guys. So seeing these comments really does mean a lot to me. I appreciate it. Also, I'm going to try something a little different on this episode. I, Professor Siege Captain, am going to focus more on historical facts and actual weapon information and be a little less memey about it. But especially as I'm doing more complicated siege weapons with actual history, I really want to discuss the history. The history is what interests me the most. If you're looking to discuss history of siege weapons with me, or anyone for that matter, I did make a Reddit. You know, Reddit's not the greatest website, but it's slightly better than the YouTube comment section when it comes to discussing your interests. So if you head over to Siege Weapons of History, I would love to talk to you about siege weapons all day and all night. And with all that said, let's get back to the lecture.
Yes. Hi, Professor. You can't actually expect me to sit through another lecture on the gastraphetes. The Oxybeles is just the gastraphetes, but bigger.
You know, for once, my dear student, you're actually right. The Oxybeles is just the gastraphetes, but a lot bigger and a lot more powerful. Entering the siege meta in 374 BC. That means there was a 25-year gap between the gastraphetes and the first sightings of the Oxybeles. This means the Oxybeles is the gastraphetes' little brother. But whereas the gastraphetes spec'd points into strength and dexterity, the Oxybeles min-maxed all its points in strength. It rolled a natural 18 and put all its bonus points into strength. This thing is a brute. Reading about this weapon in Ancient and Medieval Siege Weapons by Konstantin Nosov, we have an actual attribution to one person specifically creating this weapon. This is rare in history. Not many times do you get to attribute the invention of a weapon platform in ancient times to one person. So quoting from the book here, thus, the year 375 BC saw the emergence of the Oxybeles. There was at least two models of such arrow firers, whose invention Biton ascribes to Zopyrus of Tarentum. The first model, which the author calls Mountain Gastraphetes, and then he proceeds to describe the weapon's size, length, height, all that stuff. I'll put that on screen. It's interesting. You can build one yourself with the information given to us. That'd be a good idea for a video. Me building an Oxybeles could send an arrow straight through the side of my garage. So back to quoting, we know the latter machine fired 2 6-foot-long bolts simultaneously. We'll get into the weapon specs later, but that's amazing. An Oxybeles fires 2 arrows, 6-foot arrows. This thing is flinging spears. On Bitton's evidence, there existed 2 versions of the Oxybeles, 2 which fired moderate-sized stone balls weighing about 2.25 kilograms. The first type of such, a stone thrower, was invented by Chiron of Magnesia, and the second by Isodorus of Abydos? I don't know how to say any of these names. It was these non-torsion powered stone projectors that must have been first used in field battles around 354 BC. A very common progression in historical weapon development is build the bolt thrower first, the one that shoots the arrow, the missile, the dart, whatever you want to call it, and then immediately retrofit that to fling rocks. Each projectile has their place. I'll do an in-depth video on bolts versus rocks in another one, but bolts were for more targeted aiming fire at specific people. Rocks were kind of all around versatile, very effective against people as they can bounce and hit multiple targets, and also deal damage to structures. Whether it be a wooden shed protecting a battering ram, or you can start chipping away at the battlements of a wall. In 375 BC, the Greeks proved that they were not done with the updates on their weapon systems. Greek engineers were not going to stop at the gastraphetes, and that led us to the Oxybeles. The gastraphetes was the product of Dionysius's think tank in Syracuse in 399 BC. Having close ties to Greek city-states, ideas quickly traveled from Syracuse to the Greeks, whereupon immediately after releasing the gastraphetes, they were working on the sequel. Boy, oh boy, let me tell you, what I would give to be alive in this time period. Could you imagine how many engineers, scientists, researchers, whatever, mathematicians there were in this time period just devising novel siege weapons? You would get to travel to like the biggest cities and have unlimited resources to build, test, design novel siege weapons, and nothing is off the table. Any idea you could imagine, you could try to build and test it. And if you successfully do it, your name gets to go down in history of devising a great siege weapon. I want to travel back in time and live then. But if I went back in time and I knew what I knew now, I'd go up to the king and start pitching the idea for brass casings and magazine-fed weapons and gunpowder, and he'd ask me questions like, how do you make gunpowder? And I would be like, I guess, I don't really know. I think there's like sulfur involved in it. Saltpeter, is that a thing? Maybe some potassium? You know, you're right, King. You're always right. You're the smartest guy. I'll stick to building ballistas. What's a ballista, you ask? Well, let me tell you. Accounts of this weapon being used primarily come from who, of course, other than Alexander the Great and his conquest. He praised them for their power, their range, and their flat trajectory, making them extremely easy to aim. This is the ancient equivalency of a sniper rifle. This is innovation at its finest. Throughout Alexander's campaigns, the weapons would see use. Also, across the Hellenistic world, the Oxybeles would be used. The last mention of tension-based siege weapons, non-torsion-based siege weapons being used, comes to us from an account in 264 BC. But after that, mentions of these weapons basically does not exist. We know that from 399 BC to 264 BC is the reign of tension-based siege weapons, giving the lifespan of tension-based siege weapons only about 150 years. So even back in 399, 375 BC, militaries were spending enormous sums of money to devise new and imaginative ways to kill one another. With all this said, we shall get into the weapon specifications. Starting with the business end of the Oxybeles, we can see its massive bow. This bow would have been a technological marvel of the time period. Using materials such as hardwood and animal horn, these bows were pushing the absolute limit of materials available for the time. The composite bows made were insanely strong, far beyond the ability of humans to draw them back by hand. From what I've read, the bows they were creating were the limit of the materials. Even if they wanted to make a stronger bow for the Oxybeles, which I'm sure they did, they couldn't. They didn't have the technology to do so. To make a stronger bow would require the advent of spring steel, well, steel in general, so that it can be springy. This is why you'll see crossbows come back into the meta, because you know, gastraphetes and Oxybeles are basically just large crossbows. They can come back because you can get a lot of power out of a lot smaller of a bow. You can get more power out of a smaller steel bow than you can get out of these massive wood and horn bows. But just because steel is a better bow material, don't let that fool you. These bows were insanely strong. We will touch on this limitation of bow power later in the lecture. Stay tuned to hear how the ancients surpassed this technological limitation. As we read in that book, these things could fire 2 6-foot bolts simultaneously. You're flinging 2 spears simultaneously. You had to be packing a lot of power to do that. As a consequence of this immense draw weight, in order to pull the bows back, you had to use mechanical advantage. Winches were affixed to the back of the Oxybeles. These bows were often operated with 2 people, one on each side, slowly twisting the winch back. Along the edge of it would be a set of teeth. These teeth would catch a little metal pin preventing the bow from being discharged forward. And when wanting to be shoot, you would pull the trigger, lifting the claw that's drawing the bowstring back and discharging the bow. It's beautifully simple and a lovely design and works quite well. This is the same principle used in the gastraphetes, and this is the same principle that would be used on later siege weapons. With the ability to lock the bow back at draw, this gave the ancients the equivalency of like a modern day rifle, because now you can hold it at draw and aim the sucker ready to shoot at a moment's notice. Or like in the Nintendo 64 version of GoldenEye, where you could like press the button, you would come to a stop and it would pull up the reticle and then you could aim. If you'll allow me a little technical aside here, I find this fact just fascinating. With this winch system where it locks back into the teeth, each tooth is at a set distance apart. You know, they might be like an inch apart or an inch and a half apart, what have you. So as you're winching it back, you have to lock in each tooth position. So you have to lock here or here or here. You can't lock in between one of these teeth. This meant you could only shoot at certain ranges. So let's say we draw this Oxybeles back to 10 teeth and we discharge it and it shoots its bolt 200 meters. That's really good. Now we draw it back 11 teeth and it shoots at 215 meters. Those are the increments we can shoot at. If we wanted to hit 205 meter, we would have to change the angle of the bow. We can't just adjust its draw power. You can consistently hit 200 meters at 10 teeth, and you can consistently hit 215 meters at 11 teeth. If you want to hit in between that, you have to adjust the angle of your bow. That little bit of information is just fascinating to me. I can't really explain why it's fascinating, I just find it really cool. I know it's a little nerdy and a little bit in the weeds, but thank you for indulging me. Back to those insanely powerful bows and winch systems. In order to accommodate this, you need to build an extremely large, bulky frame to hold this all together. You don't want your weapon snapping in two mid-draw. With large bows, a stout, hefty body, and a winch system, soldiers could no longer carry them around the battlefield. With all this weight, the Oxybeles would be affixed atop a shooting platform. It'd be put on legs. This fact gives me goosebumps. I love this. This is where mounted artillery comes into place, like field artillery. The weapon systems are becoming so large and powerful, you need to mount them. This is the progression of siege weapons. This is the true innovative period of siege weapons, the dawn of siege weapons right here. The Oxybeles was one of the first, if not the first, crew-served mounted siege weapon. In these times, tradition on the battlefield was oftentimes seen as law. Wars were not like modern days where it's hundreds of small battles going on. No, usually it was two large armies moving about each other. There would be little skirmishes here and there, but you were trying to get a pitch battle on your own terms. And when those two armies met, whoever won oftentimes won the war. This meant generals and tacticians and commanders didn't want to change from the tried and true tactics. This brings us to another thought experiment. Imagine now you have to go up to your commander and you'd be like, hey man, I got an idea. And you'd be like, okay, what's that? So instead of giving individual troops bows, what if we now stick 2 or 3 people manning one bow? Also, that bow can't be moved. Once it's positioned, it's really gonna sit there on the battlefield. You can't pick it up and move it around too easy. And the commander has to have the gumption or the willingness to be like, yeah, we can give it a shot. Whoever pitched that idea must have been one hell of a salesman. But I would like to thank personally the man who came up with this idea, pitched it, and the commanders who let them implement it. The creation of my hyperfixation. If you find yourself defending against an Oxybeles, what are you to do? Your men are getting sniped off your walls and they're too afraid to approach the walls to drop big rocks on the offenders. You're gonna lose your fortress mighty quick if you're not dropping big rocks on the offenders. What are your counterplay options here? Well, you better have artillery of your own. Defenders held the advantage in siege. One of the biggest advantages is the walls. Walls are a way to give you static high ground. Using the high ground, you can outrange the enemy's artillery. So if you have your own artillery mounted to your walls, that's gonna give you a fighting chance. This just means though you have to have the technology, the resources to build the complicated composite bows, you need to have your men trained on the weapon system, and you need to have them affixed and mounted ready to go before the siege even starts. This is a classic get good situation. If you're not getting good, you're gonna die. If you didn't have artillery before the siege, it's GG. what are you going to do? Your options become extremely limited at this point. You can try to have your men go out at night and sabotage the weapons, cut the bowstrings, break the bows, set them on fire, whatever. Another option you could have is try to have a small force sally forth out of your fortifications and try to flank around the artillery positions, get in and smash them and get out. Both these options though are going to have limited effectiveness, and if the offender is worth their salt, they're going to expect this and be ready for it. The pros of the Oxybeles: for the time period, really high damage, range, and power. It was the most powerful weapon on the field at the time. In the terms of artillery, it is a relatively simple construction. These bows are difficult to make, but they knew bows back then. They were able to make them. It was a very accurate weapon, kind of the ancient equivalency of a sniper rifle. And the biggest pro is being the first crew-served mounted field artillery unit. Oh my god, I love this. That's the biggest pro in my book anyway. It doesn't mean anything on the battlefield or for those generals who were using it at the time. They weren't thinking like that, but for me, that's cool. The cons: zero mobility once deployed. Your soldiers can't really carry this and move around a battlefield. It's a little too bulky for that. Its power was limited by those composite bows. That meant you were at the limits of this weapon. There was no innovation left for it. And being a crew-served artillery piece meant it was a little more complicated to operate. It required some training beforehand. With all this said, this leads us to Professor Siege Captain's 100% historically accurate ranking of the Oxybeles. I'm giving the Oxybeles a D tier ranking. Here is why it gets a D tier ranking. As foreshadowed before, being at the limit of the power of its bows, it would be quickly replaced by a different system. What is that system? Torsion. What does torsion mean? That means we get the ballista. About time we get to the ballista. The ballista is the coolest siege weapon in the world. Torsion power systems would launch siege weapons into the stratosphere of effectiveness. Instead of using puny little animal horns and hardwood, now we're using sinew and springs. Mechanical advantage on mechanical advantage. We're getting into the real meat and potatoes of siege weapons. But we're not talking about torsion systems right now. We're still talking about the Oxybeles. It gets the D tier ranking because it occupies such an awkward middle ground. Yes, it was more powerful than a gastraphetes, but it would not be more powerful than even smaller ballistas. The fact that it doesn't have a long life in ancient siege warfare and is seldom mentioned in ancient sources allows us to infer how effective this weapon actually was. And that is going to do it for my video on the Oxybeles. I hope you enjoyed the little more in-depth version of it, a little less memey, a little more educational than entertaining. I hope it was still entertaining. Also, Professor Siege Captain himself is an eternal student. He loves to be educated on siege weapons. Please comment below the most interesting fact you heard, and also let me know what weapon you want to see next. Also, let me know if I misconstrued any facts on the Oxybeles. Let me know if I missed any interesting facts on the Oxybeles. Again, if you want to continue the dialogue in a better spot, head over to Reddit. That's r/siege weapons of history. I created it myself. Come join the siege community. And I want to say, it really means a lot to me that you spent your time watching this video. We have such a short, finite amount of time in this world. It's the one resource you're not going to get more of, and you decided to spend it with me learning about siege weapons. That makes you awesome. Go forth, siege the day, and class dismissed, artillerymen.